Okay. So just starting to introduce myself, and then I'll go through the basics process for qualifying as an English solicitor. I'll go through the elements of that. We'll talk in more depth then about qualifying work experience. Then we'll talk about exemptions, and that'll be the end of what I've got to say. And we'll move on to the question and answer section. So I'll talk for about 20 minutes, half an hour, and then how long the question and answer session runs depends on how many questions there are. But as I said, for the questions, please put them into the chat, and I'll then, I won't look at those whilst I'm talking, but I'll then look at those afterwards and work my way through the questions in order from the Q&A. As there are so many on the call, I've asked if you can keep yourself muted, because otherwise it just becomes chaotic. Okay. So I'm Ingemar Hunnings. I run Hunnings Consultancy. It's a management consultancy helping law firms with running their business. If I just share my screen, you'll see that this is our website. Okay. And we provide assistance for firms using systems, case management systems, Lead Clear, Action Step, and Proclaim. We do a lot of compliance support for all the compliance that affects law firms, but data protection, which we cover as well, goes well beyond that. And for those of you who work in-house, it is something that we could assist you with as well there. General consulting services, and then, of course, the stuff around the SQE and QWE. So we help with QWE, confirmations as an external confirming solicitor, and also helping people who are already qualified. It could be in this country as well as foreign, with applications for SQE2 exemption. So what is the SQE? The SQE is the way that the SRA has now for you to qualify as a solicitor of England and Wales. It's replacing the LPC route. Okay. And there are 4 elements for you to qualify, unless, of course, you have exemptions from some of them. So you have to have a degree or degree equivalent, which is different from the way it was with the LPC, where it had to be a law degree. Now, notice it does not have to be a law degree or indeed a degree. It's just degree equivalent. You've got to obviously sit and pass the exams, the SQE1 and SQE2. You have to have 2 years full-time equivalent qualifying work experience confirmed to the SRA. And then the usual thing of your identity being checked. I think DDS checks are carried out and such like. Okay. So let me deal with those in order. We help with not the training, but the exemptions there, and also confirmation of QWE. So what I've done here is I pulled various articles from our website, where we have articles which you can search on in here. Okay. We put an article putting together the information from the SRA on how you can get your degree validated. They use Atlantic data, and we've got links here. Obviously, there are links on the SRA website. Indeed, there are links to the SRA website here where you can get your degree validated. Okay. So the SRA outsources that. I'm not sure if my listing of the charges that are made by them is up to date, but there we go. There's some information on that. So we were looking at the first element, which was valid, your degree or degree equivalent that can be validated, has to be validated. Okay. Now the exams, SQE1 and SQE2. So SQE1 is a multiple choice exam. Okay. There are 2 exams, each of 180 multiple choice questions, 10 hours of exam time. It's tough. Tough because it is very detailed. It's also tough because of the time constraints as well. It tests you in these areas of law. Strangely, not in immigration or family. I'm baffled by why it doesn't cover those, but there we go. That's what it is. Now, these exams, there's FLK1 and FLK2. So there's 2 sets of exams in there. And we do have the exam dates on another page here, or else probably best to check with the SRA. I'll try and keep them up to date as I can on our website, but there we go. Now, that's the SQE1. The pass rate for that, or pass rate, when I say of the people who sit it, about 55% pass. So it is a tough exam, okay? Once you pass that, and only once you pass that, or if you've got an exemption, then you can apply to sit the SQE2 exam. Both these exams are administered by Kaplans on behalf of the SRA. Okay. The SQE2, whereas the SQE1 is testing you on your knowledge of the law, the SQE2 is testing you on that, but also on your application of the knowledge. So they're having a look at you as if you were a newly qualified solicitor to see if you're a safe pair of hands. Therefore, they should license you as a solicitor of England and Wales. They'll test you in these areas and also on the skills. Okay. There are 16 written and oral tests. So 12 are written and 4 are oral. Now, the written tests for the SQE2 and the SQE1 can be sat or will be sat in the Pearson VUE test centres, which is in the UK and also around the world. The oral part of the SQE2 has to be sat in England and Wales, and the centres where the oral exams are sat is usually Cardiff, Manchester and London. Okay, so you still have to travel to the UK for that part of the SQE2 exam. So the SQE1 exams you can sit in the UK and internationally, the Pearson VUE centres. Where? Okay, where may I sit the exams? You can see up here that we've got a URL, an article that we put in here, and we tried to give you the information. It's on the SRA website, of course. And so what I'm going to do, I clicked on that and it's opened up this page of the SRA website. Okay. Where can you sit them? And there is on here, they've got a list of the places they hope for you to be able to set those. But there is also a helpful tool here where you can search. I'm not going to open it up, but it's a useful tool for you to be able to find. So I have been in a position where I've been trying to help people, I don't know, Kenya or Tanzania or Nigeria. There's none in Nigeria as far as I can see, which is crackers. But there we go. And you may have to travel to South Africa or the UAE to be able to sit them. So do have a look, for those. And I think if that's the case, you might as well come to the UK. I don't know. Anyway, there's a tool there to help you find your closest Pearson VUE test centre where you can go in and basically sit on a computer and take the SQE1 and the written part of the SQE2 exams. Now, we don't help with preparation for the exams. That's a completely different business. The only help that we could give is here on our website. There is a page where I tried to list those exam prep companies that I'm aware of with an idea of a little bit of a digest as to who they are, where they come from, indicative idea of the pricing, but do please check with them and their website URL. So, there may be others, there will be probably others, and certainly there are universities. There's the list where is it up here? The SRA list. It's just a list. So that's just some information we're trying to put up there to help you with who you can use. We have no preference. We're completely agnostic. What works best for you is really very much for you to determine. Good luck with that. I tried to put pricing, as you've seen on a couple of the pages, as to what it costs to sit there for the exams as well. That does change, but we tried to put in, the most recent pricing that we're aware of. I haven't put the 24-25 pricing yet, but there we go. Okay, so let's go back to what you need to do to qualify. You've got to have a degree or degree equivalent, and you've got to pass the exams. Unless you're exempt, I'll talk about exemptions later on. You need to have 2 years full-time equivalent qualifying work experience confirmed to the SRA by an SRA-regulated solicitor. Okay, so most people will be working in a law firm. To be honest, most will be working in a law firm in England and Wales. Most people who want to qualify through the SQE route, and they will have SRA-regulated solicitors in there who should confirm their qualifying work experience. I do get contacted by people where the solicitors are refusing to do so for, as far as I can see, no good reason. The SRA gets quite cross about this and indeed have said that this becomes a disciplinary issue for the solicitor who has to justify why they are not confirming your qualifying work experience. We provide a service, as I was mentioning, where we're acting as external confirming solicitors, okay? Because you can reach out to an external solicitor to have your QWE confirmed for example, if you don't have a solicitor in your organization, you can do that. So we've done this for over 115 aspiring solicitors so far from all over the world. I would say probably the majority are working in-house as in-house legal, often to a very high level. But we've also confirmed the qualifying work experience of people working in charities, in the UN, even in the White House, and in foreign law firms and such like. You'll be amazed at the breadth of ways that people are providing legal services. It has to be full-time equivalent. The definition of full-time is not given by the SRA. It's down to the judgment of the confirming solicitor. So I can only ever talk for myself if I'm doing a combination, because I have to justify myself to the SRA. Similarly, it's my judgment call as to whether something is qualifying work experience, because I have to justify myself to the SRA because it's me that does the confirming. So asking me whether stuff that someone else is going to confirm is QWE is a little pointless, because I'm not answerable to the SRA for that. They would be. Okay. But the general rules are that qualifying work experience has to be the provision of legal services, which is the definition they've given, and they've made reference to the Legal Services Act. It does not have to be done in a law firm. It does not have to be done in England or Wales. It does not have to be done in English and Welsh law. You can reach back as far as you want in time for your QWE, and it can be voluntary, should you wish, as in unpaid. So that's some general information about the qualifying work experience element. Finally, the usual thing of proving your identity, any DBS checks and things like this. So we do get involved occasionally with that, just because people have asked and they need to have their identity verified by an SRA regulated solicitor. Again, the SRA uses Atlantic data. And so we have a little, nominal charge service for doing this online through Zoom, which the SRA does say is okay. So there's a verification process that goes on there. So those are the elements for qualifying as a solicitor. Okay. The SRA has given you power and control over that, whereas before it was in the power and control of the law firms. One other thing that I want to talk about, which is relevant to this, quite novel, but it's only relevant to those people who are resident and working in England, I think Wales as well, but Wales is slightly devolved and slightly different, and that is apprenticeships. So this is not available to people who are overseas, because it is something which is paid for and funded through companies in England and Wales and with government involvement. So it's very much an internal thing. But for those for whom it is relevant, it can be really helpful. And a lot of people don't know about this. The apprenticeship scheme has existed for decades. And you can be an apprentice bricklayer, carpenter, all sorts of things. For the very first time, solicitors also can be part of this. They would join as graduate apprentices. It is possible for them to join as apprentices straight out of school or college at the age of 60. But here we're talking about people who've taken a degree and are joining as graduate apprentices. The value to you is, as an aspiring solicitor, is that you won't have to pay, you'll have someone else paying for you the cost of the tuition fees, the cost of the exams. So it can save you thousands of pounds. Your employer would need to put you on as an apprentice. They would need to contact one of the two companies which are on the government-approved apprenticeship list, which is the University of Law and BPP. And then those companies, University of Law, BPP, will take your employer and you through the process. Your employer will have to pay 5% of the costs. You won't have to pay anything. The other 95% is paid through the government apprenticeship scheme. Okay. Now, your employer could get the final 5% refunded to them, or rather covered, if they get in touch with a company which is big enough to be paying the apprenticeship levy and ask them if they have any leftover credits, which then they can transfer over to your employer, which then covers that final 5%. So there's information on here. The apprenticeship support service is really, really helpful. And you can see there's a number, open 7 days a week, very helpful. So for those for whom this is relevant, it's very relevant. and it's something which can be really helpful for your employers. If you're an employer on here, then this can help you because you can get possibly higher grade staff than would otherwise be the case because you're giving them such a financial incentive. So much help there. Anyway, there's information there on that. Right. Let me now move on to talking about exemptions. Okay. I'm going to talk about QWE first of all, and then I'm going to talk about the exams. So qualifying work experience, you will be able to be exempt from the qualifying work experience if you are already a qualified lawyer, qualified in some jurisdiction. I used to be able to be really pedantic, okay, about that. I should say that was the rule. I have, because I'm very active in this sphere, seen some instances where the SRA has added a nuance to that, so that sometimes, because people are in jurisdictions where they qualified just by the fact they've done a degree, they haven't done any further qualification, the SRA has said to them that they still need to have their qualifying work experience confirmed. Okay. By the way, qualifying work experience can be obtained before, during, or after the exams. Okay. But it has to be done before we qualify, obviously. Now, in those strange scenarios like that, please do ask the SRA direct, because these are nuances that I'm picking up that have not been explained, and I can't see them written into any of the pages of the SRA website. But as a general rule, if you're qualified as a lawyer somewhere, then you will be automatically exempt from the QWE requirement. Upload through your MySRA profile proof of your qualification certificate or whatever it was that said you were qualified, and you should see a tick appearing in your MySRA profile next to the QWE element. It's done. Don't need to get it confirmed. The people I'm thinking of who might just qualify through their exams, often is countries which were part of the USSR, and they have to take a separate exam to become advocates. Some other countries have a similar sort of system. So that's your qualifying work experience and exemptions. Generally, you have to be qualified as a lawyer somewhere before you can get exemption from that. The SQE1 exam. Now, you can get exempted from that if you have passed the LPC and are now wanting to move over for the rest of your qualification through the SQE route. That means that you will still have to get the QWE, the SQE2 exam passed, etc. But you normally can just upload proof that you passed the LPC and you'll be given exemption from the SQE1. Okay, SQE2 exemptions. The SRA seem to be unwilling to grant exemptions from both the SQE1 and the SQE2 exams. I've had situations where aspiring solicitors have told me that they had already got an exemption from the SQE1 because they passed their LPC. And then they've applied for exemption from SQE2 because they're a foreign qualified lawyer, and they've had their exemption from the SQE1 revoked. Now, I can see the logic of that from the SRA's point of view. They want to test your knowledge in one way or another. Hey, anyway, it is what it is. My general feeling is that the SRA do not want to grant exemption from both exams. Do note that the SRA sometimes are asking for people to prove their competence in the English language, which is logical because you're being licensed as a solicitor of England and Wales. It could be that you're a Welsh speaker, in which case you'd be okay. But that's a very small number of people. So if you get exemption from the SQE2 and you've just taken the SQE1 multiple choice, they may still want you to, because they've not seen you writing anything, they may want you to prove your competence. And there's a test or exam. I don't know the details, but they'll take you, they'll ask you and they'll take you through that. Let me move on to exemption from the SQE2, where there's lots of nuance and misunderstanding. Should I mention equivalent means? I will do briefly. It is possible for you to apply for exemption from the SQE1 through effectively the equivalent means. There is a form which is used, and I'm going to share my screen and bring this up. It's not that one. It is this one here, which is used for applying for exemptions. Okay. And you would fill in sections 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then if you want to apply for exemption from SQE1, you have to fill in 5 and 6, which is sections 5 and 6, which are massive. Okay. Something we don't help with. You have to put together a huge dossier of paperwork to explain to the SRA how you have deep and in-depth and extensive experience across multiple practice areas so that you don't need to sit the SQE1 exam and should be exempt. Frankly, I think there's more effort in this than actually sitting the exam. We don't help witness. I'm still going down through the 4. It's huge. Okay. Right. SQE2 exemption, you can only apply for that if you are already a qualified in some jurisdiction. If you're not, you can't apply for exemption from SQE2. Okay. If you want to apply for exemption from SQE2, we do assist with this. Here we go. There's a page on the website. Then there's a URL where I put as much information as I can to help you free of charge. You can download the form I was just showing you from here. We've even put a guidance note to spell out what you need to do. But if you want further help, then we start charging a fairly nominal charge of £250 plus VAT if you're in the UK for giving you a fairly basic template and then reviewing what you draft as your letter of reference from your supervisor against the requirements. I'll talk some more about that in a moment. The form itself, let me go back to that. If you're applying for an exemption from the SQE2 exam, you need to fill in section 1, which is about who you are. Section 2 is about your bar, where you're qualified, and whether your qualification gives you these practice rights in these areas. We'll come back to that. Hopefully the answer is yes to all of those. Section 3, that about ethics, is fairly straightforward. Section 4, have you been granted, your jurisdiction been granted an agreed exemption? If not, then you need to fill in section 4B. Agreed exemptions. So there are some jurisdictions where the SRA has had a good look and they said, right, if you're qualified there, it's close enough to what's in the UK for us to just grant you an exemption. You fill in sections 1, 2, 3, and 4A, pay your money, they give you an exemption. There's nothing further to do. So Brazil is an example of that. Okay, so I'll show you where you can go to check these things well, there's a place on the SRA website, which you may well be able to go to from here. Okay. Or you can just copy that URL in and let's just do that live while we're on here. And you can see it gives you information. And there is this, which is really helpful here, where you can see what they've said from having looked at people's applications so far in their jurisdictions. So it doesn't cover everything. It's just those they've had a look at. By the way, Pakistan is giving you the different provinces, but actually it's the same information for all of them. It's 18 months post-qualification and legal work experience. Okay, so I'll talk some more about this in just a moment. So yeah, you've got that information in there. The actual form itself we were going through. Agreed exemptions is only a few countries. Most of you will be going through 4B, filling in the information. You want to get an SQE2 exemption, and then you're skipping through 5 and 6 because that's not relevant to you. You're on to section 7, and let me talk a little bit more about this. As a foreign qualified lawyer, you're required to have 2 years legal work experience. This is different from the definition from qualifying work experience, okay? So if it's all obtained as a mandatory part of your qualification, which I think it is, for example, in the South African jurisdiction, then you would tick 7A. And they just check your qualification. It's proved by your qualification. If all of it is obtained after your qualification, then you're ticking 7B and you're putting in obviously the name and contact details of your referee. So you would need to draft a letter of reference or a reference letter. You don't have to draft it. It could be your referee drafts it, but more likely than not, you will draft it for them to make sure it meets the requirements, which I've set out in that guidance note. The SRA obviously lists them, which your referee would then check over and sign. They would check your application and sign that, okay? So you would have to have letters of reference covering those 2 years period. Now, the SRA is also indicating that it does want your legal work experience to be to the level of your qualification. Indeed, ideally, as you employed as a lawyer qualified in that jurisdiction. So if you're a Sri Lankan lawyer, then you were employed as a Sri Lankan lawyer for this post-qualification experience. Okay, so they have tightened things up because they've been, I think, astonished at the number of people who are applying for SQE2 exemptions. 7C is a combination of 7A and 7B. Some of it is part of your qualifications, some of it is, is afterwards. So, for example, again, if we take Pakistani qualified lawyers, I think 6 months are a mandatory part of their qualification, and then 18 months they have to do after post-qualification. So you'll be taking 7C, and you'll be putting in the information here. Section 8 is for those people who either don't have the requisite combined 2 years legal work experience. If that's the case, I recommend you just wait until you've got it, or whose qualification does not give them the ability to say, yes, their qualification gives them practice rights in all of these areas. So often, for example, let's take a Russian qualified lawyer who's not an advocate. They don't get criminal litigation practice rights. I think in quite a few countries, you have to take a further exam for that. Indeed, possibly also for the civil litigation in the courts. Okay, so if that's the situation, you're left having to fill in Section 8. Now, Section 8 we don't help with. If it's involved in that, I'm just trying to find it again down at here. Where's it gone? You can see there's a lot of it. So for Section 8, what you have to do is your letter of reference, but you also have to put in a detailed explanation as to how your work that you've done, legal work experience, meets all of these requirements in here, okay? And list the evidence that you're going to be sending in a dossier to the SRA, and your referee has to cross-reference them, or you have to cross-reference them in the letter of reference that your referee will then have to sign. So it's a really big job, and yeah, it's almost, I would say, better to sit the exam, but do be aware that is not great news if you fall into that category. Okay, so we talked about exemptions from qualifying work experience if you're already a qualified lawyer. SQE1 exemption, which is if you've already passed your LPC, or you could put yourself through the torture of filling in sections 5 and 6, which the SRA will charge you, I think, about £500 or £600 to review. That takes 6 months over that, and what have you. And we talked about the application for the exemption from the SQE2 exam, which the SRA will again take about 6 months to review, and the charge for that is £265. Okay. So now we put out videos quite frequently. I put stuff up on onto LinkedIn when I hear of any changes. So I do try and keep my community up to date as much as I can on this. I think that's everything that I wanted to say with regard to just the general information. What I'm going to do now is move over to the question and answer session. So, okay, first question. For the purpose of the SQE2 exemption, does the PQE need to be within or relating to the jurisdiction I'm qualified in? For example, if I'm qualified in Egypt and have worked as a foreign lawyer at a law firm in Europe, practicing European law, would that suffice? So if I summarize that, for SQE2 exemption, does the work experience have to be done in the jurisdiction where you're qualified? The answer is no, it does not have to be done in the jurisdiction where you're qualified. It could be in another jurisdiction. It used to be that was simply it. But more recently, and I mean during this spring/summer, the SRA seems to have tightened things up. So now they are looking to see that your employment is because you are a lawyer qualified in that jurisdiction, or that you are doing work which relates to your qualification as a lawyer in that jurisdiction, rather than acting as a paralegal in another jurisdiction. So they do seem to have tightened it up and raised the bar a little bit with regard to that. So you're not restricted to your jurisdiction, but if you're working outside of your jurisdiction, then it certainly helps your application if your supervisor in their letter of reference is happy to sign that you were employed because of your qualification in your qualifying jurisdiction. And please note that your supervisor needs to be someone who is directly supervising you, and that's one of the requirements. Okay, I'm moving on to the next question. I know we do not need a training contract when we complete the SQE exams, but is it still worth applying for a training contract for QWE? Very good question. Let me summarize that or paraphrase it. Is it a good idea to apply for a training contract for QWE? This is very much a commercial question. It's not a requirement by the SRA for qualification at all. So it's then a question of, is the law firm trying to push you into the straitjacket of the way they were used to operating under the LPC? And I've heard firms saying that, well, they want to ensure the quality of what the aspiring solicitor is being trained on and such like. And I get that. But it is not a requirement of the SRA. It is an internal policy and practice. And so it would be open to you to say, no, sorry, I've got 18 months of QWE previously, which I've had confirmed. Can you please confirm the remaining 6 months where I've clearly been doing QWE? And if they refuse, then you're into that situation of, how do I take it forward? Do I want to stay with this firm, in which case I might have to grit my teeth and serve my time to do things the way they want them to do? Or do I start going for nuclear options like insisting that it's done, or asking an external solicitor to do it, or going to the SRA ethics and saying, look, they're refusing to confirm my qualifying work experience for no good reason other than just their own internal policies. So it gets difficult there, but that's, sort of commercial in a sense on that. The next question. I'm a graduate apprentice, well done, in England, working in insurance, and it's completely free. Do any other legal professions count for QWE? For example, legal advisor, judge, prosecutor, or is it only lawyer's practice? And does this apply to SQE2 exemption? Well, so there's a couple of questions in there. So I'm going to deal with one after the other, and I'll paraphrase again. So can you get your QWE in professions other than legal, like a law practice? And the answer is yes, you can. And I confirmed the qualifying work experience of people working in many different sectors. It really doesn't matter what the nature of the business is. It doesn't matter what your job description is. What matters is the nature of your work. Is it the provision of legal services? So you could be working in an accountancy firm, but the job that you're doing is specifically providing legal services, interpreting the law, advising on the law, drafting legal contracts. Absolutely possible. It's got to be the provision of legal services. So as a judge, if you were a judge, I would struggle to think that you were doing so, perhaps because who are you providing them to? Who's your client? If you're working in-house, your client is your employer. You're stretching it a bit if you're a judge and you're saying, well, it's the people, the state. I would need to have a really in-depth discussion to work that out if I was to have to make that decision. So we're getting a bit theoretical here. Prosecutor, probably yes, because you're very much doing litigious work. Prosecutor works differently in different jurisdictions, so it does depend. Yeah, I mean, but you could be working, as I said, in a charity, the Citizens Advice, giving legal advice there. That's something that's given as an example by the SRA. Okay. So now then, you've got a second question. Does this apply to the SQE2? Now, let me paraphrase that. For SQE2 exemptions, can your legal experience be obtained outside of a legal practice? The answer again is yes. It's a little bit more restrictive because the SRA wants you to be working to the level of your qualification. Remember, SQE2 exemptions are for people who are already qualified as lawyers. and that you've been employed really for the use of your skills because of your qualification in that other jurisdiction. So you could certainly be doing that, and it could be you're part of the government. Here, you're not providing legal services, in a sense, to a client. There's a different definition. So it certainly could be that you could be doing that for the purposes of the SQE2 exemption application in businesses, in-house, in all sorts of other areas other than just a law firm. So it's all a little theoretical here, so I can't give too many concrete examples. It's always down to assessing the situation for the individual concerned, but I hope that's of some general help. Okay, so next question. In relation to SQE2 exemptions, I am a qualified lawyer in Malaysia. However, I moved to Singapore to work. I never had post-qualification experience as an advocate or solicitor in Malaysia. However, I did 12 months of pupillage in order to be qualified as an advocate or solicitor in Malaysia. Can the 12 months be counted as post-qualification experience? In addition, I've been working in an offshore firm in Singapore for 2 years and have relevant experiences. Goodness me. I'm not an expert on Malaysian qualification routes and such like. What I can do is quickly check what the SRA says about Malaysia. So the SRA says you can apply for individual exemption from SQE2 exemption. To do this, you will need to provide evidence of your professional qualification, reference showing you have at least 15 months legal work experience post-qualification as a Malaysian advocate and solicitor. Okay. So you did 12 months pupillage in order to be qualified. So the SRA is taking into account, if I can do the maths correctly, for 9 months of that. And so they're requiring another 15 months post-qualification in your circumstances, as far as I can see. Post-qualification legal work experience could be obtained anywhere in the world, but it's, again, relating to whether your employment, I think the offshore firm in Singapore, is that where are you using your skills as a solicitor/advocate? Would your employers be willing to sign a letter of reference saying that they employed you because of your Malaysian qualification, in which case shouldn't be a problem. Okay, you've got to have a supervisor who directly supervised you, and you'll have to set out in the letter of reference what the arrangements were for the supervision. There are various things the SRA wants to see in the letter of reference, but Melissa, I think it certainly is possible from the information I've got there. Next question. I'm a solicitor practicing 9 years in law in Hong Kong already, but I am between jobs and I may end up in as a legal counsel, which company may not require me to hold a current practicing certificate. Will the past 9 years qualify as QWE 2? Okay, so let me paraphrase that question. I'm qualified as a solicitor in Hong Kong. Will my work post-qualification count as QWE? The answer is you're exempt from QWE because you're already qualified. You're qualified in Hong Kong. You could apply for exemption from SQE2, in which case, from the SQE2 exam, in which case, would the 9 years post-qualification practicing as a lawyer in Hong Kong count towards your QWE, as your legal work experience? Yes, the answer is. So I think you're fine on making that application for exemption from the SQE2. You are already exempt from the QWE because you're already qualified. All right, for SQE2 exemption, is it mandatory to be a practicing lawyer, or would a qualified jurist who is authorized to practice law suffice? My jurisdiction is outside the UK, but it is recognized by the SRA. Okay, again, I'll paraphrase this. SQE2 exemption, do you have to be a practicing lawyer, or could you just be a jurist or jurist? I think by jurist, I think you mean is by that you passed your law degree, which allows you to practice, but you haven't passed a further exam, which makes you, for example, an advocate. So you can apply for SQE2 exemption, but it's tough because you will have to fit in section 8 of the application form, which I showed you earlier, which is you'd have to prepare this dossier showing that your work has given you the required skills and experience for the SRA to grant you the exemption. So it's not something we help with. So yeah, it's quite tough, but you can go for it. I suspect, I don't know, it's your call as to whether you do, but this falls into this category I talked about before, where quite a few countries, particularly those which were part of the USSR, there's like two levels: the people who just passed their law degree and can practice law, and those people who take a further degree to allow them to do the advocacy in the courts and such like, who are called advocates. The advocates, yes, you can apply straight off. You're not filling in Section 8 with all of the supporting dossier and papers you have to get together. If you're not an advocate, then you have to do all that extra stuff. Next question. For the purposes of SQE1 exemption, does it matter when I completed my LPC? Is there a risk the LPC exemption is going to go away in the future? So 2 questions there, and I'll paraphrase them. So SQE1 exemption dash, does the LPC pass expire? As far as I know, it doesn't at the moment. There's no restriction as to how long ago you passed your LPC. Next question. SQE1 exemption due to the LPC dash, will the SRA remove this exemption in the future? And I don't know if they will. I can't see into the future. The transition period that we're in at the moment will expire. I can't remember the exact date, but it's somewhere later on in this decade. So at that point, it may well expire. This is a question I can't answer. I'm afraid it's in the gift of the SRA. Next question. Thank you for the webinar. So for someone who is qualified in Nigeria with 7 years legal work experience, which SQE will I be exempt from? And what do I need to get exemption after securing the exemption? Do I still need the QWE to get qualified as a solicitor in England and Wales? So let me paraphrase this. Nigerian qualified lawyer with 7 years past legal work experience, what exemptions can I get? So it's like a case study. Okay, so you, as you're qualified as a lawyer, you will be exempt from the QWE, full stop. Okay, I've dealt with people who are qualified as Nigerian lawyers. Your qualification gives you all of the practice rights. Okay, that are listed in Section 2 of the exemption application form. You will have to sit in the SQE1. You can apply for exemption from SQE2. You would need to fill in on the form sections 1, 2, 3, 4B. And I think it's 7B. Let me just check if they give you any credit. No, it'll be 7C because they give you 12 months credit for what you do to qualify, and then you need to have 12 months post-qualification legal work experience. So that's people in Nigeria. Next question. Hello, sir. I am an Indian student looking forward to pursue my master's in the UK for next year. I want to know that it is preferable that I give my SQE1 from India itself so that I can get a good job once I land in the UK and support my studies, or should I just take the exam once I'm here? Oh, my goodness. Let me paraphrase that. Should I take my SQE1 in my home country or in the UK when I start my master's? So really, I can't answer that, I don't think. And that's very much a call for you. Whether you're going to get a better job because you passed your SQE1 when you get to the UK or not, I would need to be a legal recruiter to have any hope of trying to answer that, because it is very much a commercial question of what jobs are available when you come in. You're going to be looking for jobs as a paralegal, and by far the best way of getting jobs is through connections, to be honest. If you know someone who is a lawyer that you trust in this country, then perhaps get them to ask around if you can get a paralegal job whilst you're doing your studies in the UK. Obviously, you've got to study for the SQE1, so you could be supporting yourself in India while studying, or you could be doing that in this country. The exam costs are the same, so I guess an English salary would help you cover that better than an Indian salary. but I'm clutching at straws here to advise you because a lot of this is outside of my expertise. It very much is down to you personally on that. Next question. Can you get partial QWE exemption? I worked for 2 years part-time in Australia, and that experience did qualify as QWE. I needed to qualify there. Australia only requires 75 days. Wow. So would 6 to 12 months of experience in the UK combined with my part-time 2-year work amount to enough QWE to qualify here? So let me paraphrase this. Australian qualified lawyer, do I meet QWE for qualifying as an English lawyer? The answer is no, because you're already qualified as an Australian lawyer, so you are exempt from the QWE requirement. Period. So you don't need to worry about that. Now, you will be able to apply for an exemption from the SQE2 exam. And again, if you were to refer to the SRA website, and I showed you earlier in the video where you could go on the SRA. So if you're qualified as a solicitor, you would need to show that you have at least 2 years legal work experience post-qualification, so the letter of reference. You've got a legal practitioner holding an unrestricted practicing certificate, so there's another level there. You've got an agreed exemption. So there seems to be 2 levels of qualification in Australia, okay? So, you learn stuff as you go along. There we go. Right, next question. I am practicing as a lawyer in India for the last 15 years. I did my master's in London. Are there any concessions or exemptions in my case? So let me paraphrase this. Indian qualified lawyer practiced, that paraphrase really will be Indian qualified lawyer, what exemptions can I get? And it's almost a case study here. Indian qualified lawyer, you are exempt from the qualifying work experience requirement. You will have to sit the SQE1, but you can apply for exemption from the SQE2 exam. And there are 2 levels for India. So you need to have evidence that you passed the All India Bar exam and evidence of your professional qualification in your local bar. But if you qualified before 2010, evidence of your professional qualification is all you need. So things changed in 2010. Then you're going to need to have a reference showing at least 2 years legal work experience post-qualifications of Indian advocate. I talked about that before. So there are the certain requirements you need for the letter of reference. So there we go. Okay, next question. In preparing the letter of reference for the SQE2, grateful if you could please share important pointers to be included or anything in particular that the SRA would like to see. So I'll paraphrase the question. What do you need to ensure is included in the letter of reference that you might draft for your referee? So I'm going to share my screen again at this point and take you to part of our website where, we've already got this all explained out here. And there is a guidance note to read this, okay, which you can download and open up. I'm just hoping I've got the most up-to-date version on here. Okay. So you see it set out here. So it needs to be provided for each period of experience that you want to claim against your requirement, written for the purposes of the application, to be dated within 3 months of the application, to be submitted on the supervisor's letter-headed paper. And if they've left the company where you did the work, then that's fine. It needs to be on their current letterhead paper, so the SRA can check and get in touch and speak with them if they need to. It needs to state that they supervised you directly, okay? And also set out what the supervision arrangements were. It needs to include a summary of your role and examples from their direct observation of your work. It needs to confirm the dates they supervised you and also the total hours worked per week. I would say average hours worked each week. It needs to set out the referees, the person giving the reference, their professional qualification. And if they're not a qualified lawyer, then how they're suitably qualified to offer the supervision of your work. I'm going to update this, but it needs not only to say that the work is to the level of someone you would expect holding your qualifications and not just paralegal work, but also ideally you should state that you employ because of your qualification in your said jurisdiction. Also, it needs to state that they've read your application and reviewed any supporting documentation. So there are some technical things that need to be covered there. And as I said, I'll give you all the information for free on the website, but we offer to review your draft documents and such like for a fee of $250 plus VAT should you wish for that assistance. I hope that was helpful for people. We will be putting up on our YouTube channel a recording of this video. The green one is going to be the recording of this session, and I'm going to break down the Q&A into these shorter videos. All right, please do subscribe if you can. Hunnings Consultancy, that's where the YouTube channel is. All right, we will tomorrow publish, I'll publish onto my LinkedIn links to the different pages and resources that I've been referring to in this training session. So watch out for that on LinkedIn and feel free to like it if you think that's going to be helpful to other people. If you're not on LinkedIn, because there are some people who contacted us elsewise, then let me know. Email me, Ingemar@Hunnings Consultancy. I'll put this in here, .co.uk, and then we can send that to you direct. But LinkedIn is where it's going to be put up primarily. Okay, I can't see any other questions coming through, so I'm going to terminate the webinar. I wish you every success in your journey. And as I said, please feel free to let other people know who we might be able to help or want help from us. Okay, have a good afternoon. Best of luck, everyone. Bye-bye.